Welcome to the podcast. We Do Recover with Jared Miller, your host.
And I'm Dr. Terry Sellers, your co-host.
This is a podcast about recovery from addiction.
We want to talk about what successful recovery can look like.
Brought to you by Subs Recovery Center, Rise Up Subs, and the St. George Hilton Garden Inn.
I have a serious dilemma. I've had this problem, this dilemma for like the last 2 hours today. And I would really like some insight on it, whether it's from you guys, from our listeners, whatever, right?
You understand I'm scared to death right now. I
Oh,
have no
you
idea
should
what's
be.
about
It's
to come
pretty
out of your
serious.
mouth.
Is it okay to rock socks with Crocs? Right? Like, so do you know what I'm talking about?
Did you just say
so-
rock socks with Crocs?
Yeah, I'm rocking socks with Crocs right now because it's the winter time. My feet don't want to be cold, but I love comfort. Is it like stylish? Is it okay? Is it socially acceptable for us to rock socks with Crocs these days?
Can I ask one question before we move on?
Of course.
Before we get to the answer?
Yeah.
Didn't you play college football?
Yes.
Does that make you a jock who rocks socks with Crocs?
Yes. I'm guilty of being
Rock out with your Croc socks
a
out.
jock that rocks socks
With Crocs.
with Crocs. Thank you.
Yeah.
So
Hey, don't let anybody knocks you.
Yeah, exactly. Don't have too many clocks.
So,
And that's
I see
nothing
what
to
we're
balk
doing
at.
here. I see what we're doing here.
Yeah.
But no, like, you know.
Do you own any
So
stocks?
this is stuff I think about, guys. This is part of the OCD that I have, right? Like I get fixated on something and it drives me kind of crazy.
Hold on.
And so I'm like wondering if right
Sean.
now I'm the equivalent.
Hey, Mandy, come here.
I'm
God.
wondering if I'm the equivalent of like the guy
The
wearing
producer.
the tube high socks.
Okay,
with
your
open-
husband's wearing socks with Crocs. Is that good or bad?
socially acceptable, babe.
He's wearing like little low rise, so you have like ankle
Yeah,
showing.
I'm good.
It's okay?
Okay, yeah.
And your Crocs look like Vans. Here, pick them up. Put them on the table so we can see. So they
Here
got
we go. There's
Vans
the
looking Crocs.
Oh, those are.
Yeah.
You got like little.
You
little
got-
Do you want me to
Is
pull
it
my
okay?
socks up next?
Okay. Wifey says it's okay, man.
You
You're
got
good to go.
stylish Crocs, dude.
Hey, thanks, guy.
I actually could wear those. No, I couldn't.
Now that we're 2 minutes into this
Right,
thing and I've
yeah.
gotten nowhere. But, you know,
Oh, how come the
I just had to
the
ask.
timer's going backwards today?
Nobody notices except you. Just work with it.
Okay.
you want to introduce our guest?
Yeah, no, I don't. We're just gonna let Anthony sit over there and not talk at all. So here we are in studio. We have a special guest. I said guest. Anthony Povenza. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm
Yeah.
glad to be here.
Yeah, Anthony and I. You know how I know Anthony? It's a weird
Anthony's
thing.
got that look on his face that like we are all now dumber
Oh, we're
for
dumber.
have listening
we're
to.
yeah, for
To
sure.
the Croc conversation.
Right.
Yes.
The crowd conversation enlightened to no one, but that's all right. I met Anthony. This is weird. I met Anthony in school.
Get out of here.
You thought I was done with school, but when was that?
2013.
2013. I decided I'm going to
Cohort.
go back to school and get an MBA.
Okay.
Weird life choice, but I thought, okay, maybe I'll try this.
Wait, was this after you'd already gotten a medical degree?
Oh yeah, 2013. Like I started practicing medicine in 1995.
Wow.
So yeah, this was after I had a medical degree, a medical license, and lost said medical license in 2005. So I decided to go back to school and get an MBA. Now I didn't finish. I don't have an MBA. I went to. I can't remember if I
He
went
had
to the
some great
second semester.
opportunities.
Yeah, I
That's
got
why
hit
he-
with a job offer in the first year that I just couldn't turn down, and I couldn't do school with the job offer. So.
Your higher power had a different direction for you,
Yeah.
but that's how you met Anthony.
Yep.
Yeah, no, we met, and Anthony is so we hit it off for a couple of reasons, and one is he's a golfer.
Yeah.
Anthony plays a lot of golf and is a very good golfer. You've played with him. He's an outstanding golfer. And don't try and be shy with us. You're an outstanding golfer.
Well, I don't play nearly as much as I'd like to.
Yeah, well,
I've got
sure.
4 little kids, so
Yeah, that makes it difficult for sure. All right, well, but before we move on into Anthony and what Anthony's doing here, we usually do this segment called New and Goods. And Anthony, you want to lead us off? Anything new and good in your life?
absolutely.
Oh, wait. I forgot that I do a podcast. We have sponsors that we'd like to
There you
talk
go.
about before we get to New and Goods. Jared, could you maybe take a minute and remind me that we have sponsors and tell us about a couple of sponsors?
Absolutely. So this podcast is sponsored by Steps Recovery Centers is our gold sponsor. Steps Recovery Centers is an adult substance abuse and mental health treatment provider. Steps Recovery Centers provides all levels of care. They have a medical detox facility, multiple residential treatment centers, and outpatient treatment services reaching from the top of Utah to the bottom. Recovery starts with you, and at Steps Recovery Centers, there's always hope. Call them today at 801-800-8142 or visit their website at stepsrc.com to learn more. So, little side note, I work for Steps.
Okay.
We have a lot of listeners from out of state. I've said this on past episodes. I'll say it on this one. If you or a loved one needs help, reach out. We have no problem picking you up from the airport, taking you straight to detox, right? Like the commute, the travel and the commute is not a problem for us if it's not a problem for you. We appreciate them sponsoring this podcast.
And Steps has been our sponsor for a very long time and has been very good to us. And for those of you that have anyone in your life who needs help, it's an excellent place to go get treatment.
Yeah.
I've worked at Steps myself a long time ago, obviously, but Steps is a quality program. It really is. It's one of the quality programs in the state for sure.
Yep. Appreciate
right.
them sponsoring this podcast.
Do you have
This episode is also brought to us by Rise Up Supplements.
I'm going to do Rise. I was going to do Rise Up Supplements.
There you go.
Maybe we should let you do it. Rise Up Supplements is a nootropic supplement line aimed at optimizing brain function and supporting mental health. They have two powerful blends. The first is Mindful Mood, which helps decrease anxiety and enhance mood. They also have Mind Shift, which helps increase focus and optimize brain function. You can place your order at riseupsups.com, and it's RISEUPS.com. Rise Up Subs. They have a you can get a discount. Tell us about that, Jared. You remember that? I don't remember what the discount code is.
Yeah, for our listeners only, podcast 20 in all caps save you 20% off your entire purchase.
There you go.
Again, these are supplements for the brain, the noggin, the noodle, the old think tank, right? Like, It's good for, especially for people in early recovery that are trying to get their brains, back on, rewired, back on track. I've had people reach out and say, am I going to test positive for, a drug test on this?
No.
Absolutely not. And if so, we have Anthony Povenza here that can speak
Absolutely.
to that 1,000%.
No.
So we appreciate them sponsoring this podcast.
Yeah, so something just popped into my brain and I lost it again, so I'm going to go to Anthony anyway. But Rise Up Subs has been a very nice sponsor as well. We appreciate them. What it was I agree with what you just said more than anything that we've said about Rise Up Subs, and that is it is excellent we beat those of us who are coming out of addiction have beat up our brains for such a long time, and it takes optimum nutrition to get your brain back sooner rather than later. And this will help quite a bit. This will help people focus that struggle with that. It will help people calm down and chill out that need help with that without anything in it that is possibly addictive.
One of these times we're going to do an episode on exactly what it does and how it can help the neuroplasticity of the brain and all the receptors. It'd be a good thing.
All right. Well, back to Anthony. What's no good in your world?
New and good. I've got a birthday tomorrow.
You do?
So I'm a
happy birthday. I forgot. I knew that. Actually, I forgot you were coming down here for your birthday, sort of.
Yep, celebrating my 43rd birthday. My wife's here with me, so
awesome.
I'm going to enjoy some St. George golf.
Any chance I can take you golfing for your birthday?
Absolutely.
All right, great.
I won't turn it down. I won't turn it down.
All right, that'll be my gift to you.
Happy birthday, man.
Thank you.
It's super
Thank
cool.
you.
Yeah, that's awesome. All right, well, good. 43, you said.
43 years young, yep.
Wow, I can't remember 43, but how old are you, Jared?
38.
Okay, I got a bunch of youngsters on here. Donovan, how old are you?
49.
Jeez.
Hey, Terry, how old are you?
64.
Methuselah plus 3. That's how old he is.
64. If you're old enough to remember a group called the Beatles, they used to sing a song that was When I'm 64.
Yep.
And that song now apparently is about me. Will you still meet me? Will you still greet me when I'm 64? So there we go.
I love it.
All right.
That's your new and good.
Nope, that's not my new and good. But I want to know what yours is.
New and good. Man. I'm blanking right now. We're going
Okay.
golfing tomorrow.
That's okay. I can go to Sean.
We're
and you
going to
can have a
dinner
second.
tonight. Like,
Yeah, we are.
yeah, life's today. I got to have a really cool process group with my clients at outpatient. That was cool. That was good. A lot of like heavy topic, a lot of, education around exactly how this whole thing works in the brain.
Sure. Great. Mr. Denovan, what is new and good in the world of Sean Denovan?
My hot tub works.
Yes. I was going to say,
I'm
if you
so
don't
happy
mention
for
the
you.
hot tub, I'm going to mention it for you. 'Cause we left everybody in suspense last week because we record on Friday afternoon, and the hot tub guy was coming over at 7 p.m. Friday night to check it out.
So it's been like a multi-month thing. We bought it back in August, then we had to get the cement pad, and then we had to get the 220 put in. So this is like big boy hot tub time. None of this like Craigslist $200 thing that I've done in the past. So
Yeah.
I feel like, okay, we can do it, and then it leaked. Anyways, he came by on Friday with a brand new motor, didn't charge me anything for it.
Wow.
And this is just like off a Facebook ad. So he's actually like stepped up as a quality individual and a human being. Put the new motor in, and then spent an hour with me going over all the chemicals.
Awesome.
So, and then I jumped in, and then away we went.
I would say that you're more than welcome to mention his name, although you may not want to. It's up to you.
Yeah,
We'll leave him out of it.
Don't have his permission.
But you're
Okay.
doing good.
Well, I'm going to skip what I was going to do because I was going to do a seller's silly seconds, but we're 11 minutes in.
I was going to say, we're 11 minutes into this. The
so
title,
I'm just going to say new and good in my world is I'm in St. George and it's warm enough to play golf. How about that?
heck yeah.
Yeah.
I'll take it.
Yeah.
So the title of this thing is Dirty Details of Urinalysis Testing.
So,
Doc, why are we titling it that?
well, let's let Anthony tell us what he does for a living.
All right. So I am the territory manager here in Utah for a laboratory out of San Diego called Precision Diagnostics. So we specialize in urine and oral fluid drug testing. So we service treatment facilities, we service pain management clinics, primary care doctors, internal medicine docs. The greatest benefit to the provider is just to be able to monitor and track the meds that they're prescribing, make sure their patients are compliant.
How'd you get into that?
That's a great question. Because I have an interesting career path.
Okay.
The first 10 years of my career.
That's kind of what I'm asking, actually.
Yeah. First 10 years of my career I spent in the laboratory space.
Okay.
So I've worked in mass spec labs. I've managed a toxicology lab and was a scientist. So that's where I spent the first 10 years of my
That's
career.
kind of what I know you as a laboratory scientist. Are you not really doing the science part of this in this company?
No.
You're not the lab scientist. You're more of a territory manager.
Yep.
That's cool though, because who better to speak to it than somebody that knows what
Absolutely,
right.
how it all works.
Guy-
Like I'm a
guy's been
little
there.
nervous that this is going to go completely over my head because, like, I'm not going to lie. At outpatient, I have the techs that work for the diagnostic center just do the whole reports because I mean some of this stuff's like chlorophyll, more like borophyll, right?
It's like reading Chinese sometimes. Yeah.
So
Yep.
Some big words in his reports, I can tell you that.
yeah.
Yep.
So, all right. So you got into that initially sort of in the science aspect of it. You've now transitioned more to managing clients. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah. Sales.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. It's kind of a sales job, sort of. You're trying to convince people that your lab is better than other labs, which it is, of course. But
Absolutely.
but let's talk about that. What? There's some specific topics I want to touch on, and we've still got a fair amount of time, so we're good. But what is a quality lab in your mind? What makes a quality lab company?
That's a great question. So I think first and foremost is just being a laboratory that has integrity. First and foremost, billing appropriately. So one of the things that I love about Precision is that we are in network with insurances, making sure that we bill appropriately. There's been a lot of changes, and we'll talk a lot about this, but there's been a lot of changes with payers and what they reimburse for a urine drug test. And Precision is very on the forefront of educating clients about that and providers about that. So our goal at Precision is to align the payers, the patients, and the providers. That is our goal. And so I think we do a really good job of that.
There for sure has been. Did you have something? Sorry.
I was just going to say that the thing that I love about this topic is I feel like as a clinician, one of my foundational pieces is being able to rely on a company that can tell me how much a client's, first of all, are they dirty or are they not dirty, right? Yep. Are they abstaining from mind-altering substances 101? And then, okay, they're getting prescribed certain medications. Are they using them correctly or are they abusing them, right? Yep. Like I tell clients all the time, the detailed reports that we get, we know if you're taking extra gabapentin. Yep. We know if you're doubling up on your Suboxone. Like we know, right? So you can't really cheat the system. It's going to come up. And I feel like to be able to have those conversations with clients with reliable data can be game changers because it gives them the opportunity to be honest, forthcoming, right? Like help navigate correctly so that they really are doing this thing without falling through the cracks.
For sure.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up. I want to start this off from my point of view of a long time ago, well, first of all, there's been a long history in this industry of abusing the system.
Absolutely.
There were payers not that long ago that were making $1,400 per UA.
Well, I've heard of upwards of $10,000 per urine drug test.
Yeah,
that's insane.
In the wild west days of toxicology. Yep.
I think I mentioned this once on this podcast, but I once got a letter from an insurance company asking me for records for the $88,000 worth of urinalysis drug testing that I had done on one patient. And now the interesting thing is I was no longer working at the place that letter was addressed to, and the patient had been billed after I left, and they were still using my name. But $88,000 for 6 months worth of drug testing.
Yeah, ridiculous, right?
Right. And listen, this industry helps a ton of people, but there's also some bad players in this industry for sure.
Absolutely.
And that's been done.
Yeah. Fortunately, I think a lot of the bad players are being weeded out now.
Yeah, sure.
But there's still...
I don't hear of that stuff going on anymore.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah. There's, I just think that payers are really cracking down on what they'll reimburse. And so laboratories, we have to conform to that. We have to make sure that we're billing appropriately. Otherwise, we won't get reimbursed for those tests. So.
To me, it seems like it was about 6 or 7 years ago where insurance companies started requiring me to write a letter or to write a statement as to why I felt like we needed to drug test patients.
Yep.
That's an easy answer, right?
Yep.
This is how we monitor this disease. This is the number one way to monitor the disease of addiction. And you can have opinions on how frequently it needs to be done, but you can't argue that it absolutely needs to be done.
Yes.
People will say all the time, well, they're in residential. Why do they need... Really? You ever had anybody sneak drugs into a residential treatment center, Jared?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Me too. A lot of them. It's not that uncommon.
Happens all the time.
Yeah.
Right.
They need to be... That's the only... And the other thing is then another time where we test people is... after they have left the treatment center, say on a pass or to go home and take care of a doctor's appointment or something like that. And then they come back. We want to know if any hanky-panky went on. Not hanky-panky. I'm not talking about that kind of hanky-panky.
Right. The last thing you want is for a client to start going into, withdrawals from alcohol or benzos or something and have some life-altering 911 emergency situation.
That's the other thing. That's a great point because the studies have shown that clients coming into treatment asking for help report somewhere on the order of 30 to 50% of what they're actually doing. And this is a way you can check that. Because I've been lied to by at least 2 clients. I'm kidding. Hundreds of clients probably.
Absolutely.
I probably was one of those clients at one point, right? But we get lied to all the time. This is the way to start with a baseline. First of all, when they come into treatment is, what do you got in your system? And what does that look like? And that's weird. You only reported 2 things that you use and you got 7 things in your urine.
Yep.
So it is absolutely a critical piece of treatment because it's the number one way to monitor someone's progress.
For sure.
So,
yeah, you want the most accurate results. And, we were kind of talking about what separates our lab from other labs. And, we have some of the most sensitive instrumentation out there. So most laboratories, when they're doing urine drug testing, they use similar technology. They're using
Okay.
triple quad mass specs.
Okay.
And so those are the instruments that I've worked on.
Can you say that in English for some people? What is the? I actually myself, I'm a physician. Don't know what triple quad meant. I know what a mass spectrometer is, but I don't know what a triple
So you
quad
got
means.
quadruples. We could get into the weeds with this.
That's
'cause,
a lot of weeds?
Yeah,
We don't need to then.
There's a lot of. I mean, I could bore you to death with.
It's a machine.
Chemistry.
It's a
an
machine that reads
extremely-
chemicals in urine.
Yeah, it's an
Right.
extremely
Yep.
sophisticated machine.
For
Okay,
sure.
we'll
Yeah.
leave that. That's fine.
Yeah. So the mass specs that we use are 30 to 40 times more sensitive than industry standards. So
okay,
what
beautiful.
Precision did is they went out and invested in these research grade mass specs. And so we have the ability to test at really low levels.
Sure.
And we can detect, minute levels of any drugs that are in the patient or client system.
Sure.
So, if you're wanting the most accurate information, that's what you want, right?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Partnership with doctors.
Yep.
Tell me about that. Like, what is it you want in a? So you go to treatment centers, physicians that are in this industry, and you try to convince them your lab is the best. They're
Yep.
convinced. What do you need from them
So there's a few things that we need to get going
in a partnership, for example? Like, yeah, what could I do better? Is what I'm really asking.
in a
Like,
partnership.
yeah.
So really, we want you guys as providers to chart and make sure that what you're doing meets medical necessity. So that's a big part of this, right? That's why insurance companies get so uptight, is they want to make sure that the tests that are being ordered are medically necessary for the patient or the client.
Okay, that's some weeds that I really want to get into.
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
I don't think I want to do it this segment because we only have a few minutes left, but the insurance companies strong stranglehold over this whole thing, and I want to talk about what insurance companies allow, but I think
Yeah.
we want to do that in the second
Yeah.
segment. But yeah, that's a big deal, right?
Yeah. We want that from our providers. We want that partnership because we're trying to watch their backs. We're trying to give them the most important information, but they also need to do their due diligence and chart why they're ordering that test.
Yeah.
To make sure that's in the EHR. They have that record of that, and so that's important.
Okay, so we have just a couple of minutes left in this first segment, but I want to ask you, and this is going to go in a different direction for a second, but what are some of the crazier problems you've seen with drug testing? We talked about billing $1,400 or $10,000 for a UA, right?
Oh gosh, I've seen it all.
What's the craziest? I mean, what's some of the crazy stuff you've seen?
Oh man. So I mean, you hear about labs doing pass through billing.
Tell me what pass through billing is.
So they'll use like a hospital to
Okay.
use them for billing because the hospital is in network. So they'll pass through bills through a
Oh,
hospital.
interesting, huh?
if
So the
they
treatment
don't
center's
have
not in network, but
Nope.
they
Yeah, they're like
try to bill it through a
We'll
hospital.
do it at this podunk hospital out in no man's land, and we can bill through them.
Okay.
So we get that in network status.
Sure.
Profit sharing with physicians.
Okay,
we'll
so
we'll give you a portion.
kickbacks basically.
Kickbacks, yep.
Every UA you order, we're going to give you $20 or
Yep.
$50 or whatever it is.
Which at one time wasn't illegal,
Yeah.
and it's totally illegal now. But at one time that was.
But why is it illegal?
Well, it's kickback.
It's unethical.
It's unethical,
right?
right?
It's been legal before, but it's never been ethical.
Ethical, correct?
Right?
Yep.
So
Correct.
it's if we need, as a physician, I need to order a drug test for a patient based on necessity, not based on the fact that I might make something out, I might get something out of that.
Well, yeah. When you bring
Other
that
than information.
when you bring that aspect into it, what's going to stop you as a provider from ordering 10 UAs?
Right.
Well, this patient needs a UA every day.
Yeah, for sure.
There's not medical
and maybe
necessity
some in
there.
It's like a
some of-
personal ATM for you.
Right.
Yeah,
some of them need it in the morning and in the evening, right?
you're getting
Like,
paid for the problem and the
that-
solution.
That's always been money is as dirty in this industry as it is in any other industry.
With a treatment center sponsoring this podcast, I also want to point out, like, there are plenty of places that do it right. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Like,
Yep.
anytime we start getting into kind of these gray areas, I'm always like, this is what gives our industry kind of a bad rap.
Yep.
And so we are pro treatment, right? We all work in this field. So I just want to kind of put that disclaimer out there that, this is the stuff that gives us a black eye.
Yeah.
I also want to talk to you
we're
about
about
some
out of
different
time.
stuff in part 2
Yeah.
about some poppy seed positives and some things like that. So
Great point. All right, we'll be back right after this break and a word from our sponsors.
You are listening to We Do Recover with Jared Miller and co-hosted by Dr. Terry Sellers. We'll be right back after this short break with more of We Do Recover with Jared Miller. Brought to you by Steps Recovery Center, Rise Up Subs in the St. George Hilton Garden Inn.
If you or your loved one is trapped in the cycle of addiction, there is a way out.
At Steps Recovery Center in Utah, we believe in second chances and new beginnings. Our evidence-based treatments, compassionate staff, and supportive community guide you on the path to recovery.
It is time to reclaim your life. Take the first step towards freedom, resilience, and a brighter tomorrow. Reach out to Steps Recovery Centers today.
Recovery starts with you, and at Steps, there is always hope. Call us or visit our website to learn more.
We welcome you back to We Do Recover with Jared Miller, co-hosted by Dr. Terry Sellers. Brought to you by Steps Recovery Center, Rise Up Subs in the St. George Hilton Garden Inn. And now with part 2 of our podcast, Jared Miller and Dr. Terry Sellers.
All right, welcome back, everybody. We are talking with Anthony Povenza. Anthony Povenza works for a laboratory company called Precision Diagnostics, and he has been both a laboratory scientist and also a sort of territory manager where he gets and relates with clients.
basically he's a super smart guy that's good with people.
Right.
That's great.
Right, which is an uncommon.
Very
right?
uncommon.
You're either smart or you're good with people usually, right? And I'm neither, but he's both, so it's good. But before we move on, we got to mention another really good sponsor. Anthony maybe can speak to this, but one of our sponsors is the Hilton Garden Inn. And if you happen to be traveling through southern Utah, give the Hilton Garden Inn a Google search. Just type in Hilton Garden Inn. They have it's a great hotel. The rooms are big, the rooms are clean, the hot tub's fantastic. The staff is very friendly, and I have never had one problem with staff at all when I've stayed there. Anthony's staying there this evening, so
It's a
what do you
beautiful
think?
property.
Yeah, it's a great hotel. We love the Hilton Garden Inn, and if you need some place to stay when you're down south in Utah, please give them a shot at your business. Okay, Jared might have a question that he wanted to lead us off with. Is that
So like the dialogue's been great so far, right? And like from like an industry standpoint, where we've been, where we're going, getting out some of the bad players. We've talked about that some of that stuff's the reason why we have a black eye in this industry. And so I kind of want to move into the conversations of like we've established the importance of drug testing and why we need it, right? It's foundational. It helps provide accountability for clients. Let me hit you with something. One of the toughest things I run into as a counselor is I get a report back and it says it's positive for morphine. And I take it to the client, right? And I say, hey, what's going on? And they say, I swear, Jared, I haven't used, man. I wouldn't do that. I don't want to change my clean date, right? And so then I'm like, I call the lab, right? And I'm like, hey, this person's adamantly denying this. And I get this. It could be poppy seeds. That's crazy to me, right? And of course, there's levels, and I'm learning all this stuff, right? I've had to learn this stuff. Now I can kind of differentiate a little bit. But speak to that. There are some things that will make you test positive. It's called a false positive.
Correct. Yep. Yeah, that's the big difference, right? You got 3 levels of testing with toxicology. You got your point of care cup.
So that's a UA that people just urinate in a cup and they read it right there off the cup.
Yeah.
Right. There's these little
Levels. It's just yes or no.
Just
Right.
positive, negative. Yep.
Oh, that's a really important point because I get people all the time that say, well, I had this really faint line. I must mean I don't have very much in my system. It doesn't mean that at all.
No,
These are yes and no cups. You either have some in your system, you don't, period. It doesn't tell you levels. It can't. The light line is as positive as the darkest line you can think of.
Correct. And the point of care cup is a good, quick screening tool, but obviously there's a lot of downsides to them, right?
Yeah.
What is the if you want to get into this for a second, what is the upside and downside of screening tests in general?
So screening tests, they're less expensive.
Yep.
Like it costs quite a bit of money to run a mass spec or a confirmatory.
Sure.
So I'm going to use interchangeable terms here, like confirmatory, definitive. That's the mass spec. That's a quantitative result, right?
Quantitative meaning you can get levels. You can tell how much
Yep.
of it's in their system.
Yep.
Right.
A presumptive or a screen test, there's two types. There's your point of care cup, and then there's like your immunoassay or desktop analyzer. So your point of care cup is like I said, it's a quick screening instrument. It's quick and easy. The problem with it is you could get false positives. You could also get false negatives.
Right.
Because the cutoffs for them are a lot higher.
Right.
So if they're taking small amounts, you're not going to detect that. It's not going to show up.
So in a screening test, what you want, and correct me if I'm saying this incorrectly, but what you want out of a screening test is, first of all, the things you've mentioned needs to be widely applicable to a general population that you can administer relatively cheaply. You want to pick up everyone with the disease you're looking for, and you don't want to miss many of those people. But in doing so, you're also going to pick up some people that don't have the disease, and those are the false positives.
Yep.
But that's the danger, right, of a
Correct.
screening test is you may actually pick up some people that don't have the disease, but you won't miss very many people that do,
Yep.
right?
Well, and that's the reason why you send off for confirmation, right?
Right.
So if you do have a presumptive positive, well, let's send it off for confirmation to
Okay.
make sure that, because the
I was
mass
gonna
spec's
say-
not going to lie.
A lot of times what we run into is medications, because they're similar in a molecular level, they look like on the dip test, if you will, or point of care cup, it'll show a false positive. And then when you send it off for confirmation, it ends up coming back, oh no, it was just the medication that they're prescribed is very similar from a DNA standpoint to the chemical that you're screening for. So that's why it came up as a false positive. And that's
Right.
why it's important to send it off, because listen, if I'm an outpatient director and I'm looking at little Johnny or little Susie, and I have to look at like kicking them out of the house for 72 hours, I'm going to need more details than just
Yep.
black and white.
Yep. Yeah, that's the important thing to remember about a screen test is it's a presumptive test, and there's an antibody binding there. So it's an indirect measurement. And I don't want to get into the weeds here, but if that binding is incorrect, if you have a substance in the urine that binds to those receptor sites on the point of care cup,
Right.
and it's not that what
Right.
shows positive,
It's not alprazolam.
yeah, it's a false positive, right?
Right.
So there could be similar receptor sites that bind, and it says, hey, they're positive for this, when it's really a different substance.
Yeah.
And
So point of care cups, that's the downside is you'll get more false positives than you will on a confirmatory test.
false positives and false negatives.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
I mean, it even says it right.
And you
on
can change that though, right? You could, depending on, what it is you're trying to detect. And in a screening test, you're trying to pick up everyone with the disease. And in so doing, you set the levels that are called positive
Yep.
at a certain number. And so, but doing that means you won't miss people that have whatever it is in their urine, but you might pick up some that actually don't.
Yep.
You get a higher rate of false positives on a screening test.
Correct. Yep.
Okay, so then we send it off to the lab. Somebody tested positive. Little Susie tested positive for
Alcohol.
gabapentin, alcohol, whatever.
So you send it off to the lab for confirmation. So it's going to be ran on a mass spec, triple quad mass spec. So what's different about a mass spec and a screen? So like I said, you got an indirect measurement where you've got that binding, and then you're measuring that binding. Mass spec, it's a direct measurement. We're
You're actually
measuring the actual
how much of that substance is
Exactly,
in
the
there, is in their
molecular
blood
weight
or
of
their
that
urine
substance.
or their whatever you're testing. Okay.
So it's a direct measurement. There's a detector at the back of that instrument, and it's going to say, hey, you have 69.5 nanograms per mil of gabapentin,
Right.
or this much alcohol. It's going to give you levels, and it's going to give you the metabolites. So that's another thing too that you don't get with the screen. You
Right.
get the actual metabolites. So as the drugs go through the body and they go through the kidneys, they metabolize into different things.
Right.
So like oxycodone's got oxymorphone and noroxycodone that it metabolizes to. You'll see those metabolites as well.
Broken down.
Yep. And that's how you know that they're taking it.
Exactly.
It's going through their system.
Exactly.
So working in the lab, I've seen some crazy stuff. I mean, I saw a report once. This patient was positive for oxycodone, morphine, fentanyl, and amphetamine, which is crazy, right? This is what
Not that crazy
That
for
guy's
us.
not feeling much.
This is what the provider was prescribing. Out of the 6 months that we were testing him, this was when I was in the lab. Out of the 6 months we were testing this one patient, they had no metabolites. So they had really high levels of the parent drug and no metabolites.
So
would cause
what were
that?
they doing? What
So-
were they,
Yeah, what would cause that? I have no
Doc,
idea.
do you know?
Well, I think I do, but I know one way you could do that, and that would be to have some of that substance
Exactly.
and
Shave it off
drop
and
drop a
shave it
little
off,
bit
yeah.
into the UA
It's called pill
Why
shaving.
would you do that?
It's called pill shaving.
because you want your treatment provider to think you're taking your medications as prescribed.
Oh, so you're talking now? We're not talking about treatment centers. We're talking about like pain clinics.
Okay, sure.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
somebody's
this is-
somebody's
yeah.
wanting to they're
Correct.
prescribed like
Sure.
Yep.
Okay.
This was like a pain management provider.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, think about this: the street value of those medications. You shave some of that off, and then what do you do with the rest?
Oh, you
sell
take it,
right?
Oh, you sell it. Yeah.
Yep, you sell it.
Yeah.
Sell it on the street.
Well, you can't take it because you'd have metabolites in your
Yeah,
urine.
yeah,
absolutely.
But that's what that patient was doing.
So yeah, and you don't have to shave off very much.
Yep.
Holy mackerel! You just
So we had a
shave off little
conversation
slack.
with that provider, and we were like, "Are you looking at these results? Because this patient has no metabolites over the 6-month period. They're not taking these meds."
Right.
And it was kind of an eye-opening experience.
But
for
that's
that provider.
That's the thing, right? Like the thing I'm learning is the devil's in the details when it comes to these drug screening things. It's not just as simple as it used to be. Like at previous treatment centers I worked at, like to get somebody into treatment when I did marketing and intakes, it was a point of care cup or a dip, 11 panel
Right,
dip.
right.
And it was either yes or no.
Right.
And oh my gosh, is it way different than that? You got to take in creatinine levels. You got to take
Yes,
in
exactly.
I mean, like most of the time when stuff looks fishy, I have to call the 1-800 number and talk to a pharmacist and say, what is this?
Yeah.
Because it's so, I mean, you need like a master's level to really understand some of this stuff.
That's what's so scary is a lot of providers that I've seen over the years that I've been in this industry put so much stock in those point of care cups.
Yeah.
And it's like right on the package insert, it says they're wrong half of the time.
Yeah,
46% of the time, these could have a false positive or false negative. Why are you basing your clinical decisions on something that's wrong half of the time?
So rather
that's
than
rough,
making a clinical decision on a point of care cup, the decision is, I suspect this guy might have this in his urine. I want to know. You want to know? You send it to the
send it to
lab
the
and
lab.
have them run it on a mass spec,
Yep.
right?
Yeah, like it Steps Recovery, where I work, we don't make any actionable decisions based off of a POC cup
Right.
or an 11 panel
That's good.
dip, right. Everything has to be sent to a lab, confirmed, 100%
Yep.
confirmation before we carry out an actionable, whether
Yep.
that's talking to a client or 72ing them from sober living. In other
Yeah.
words, asking them to leave for 3 days until they can test clean to come back.
Yep.
Because, like it's just, so how we manage that is down here in St. George, Mondays and Thursdays are mandatory UA days. And that's just in a point of care cup.
Yep.
If that point of care cup comes back positive, then of course we send it to the lab. And outside of that, they have a color that they call every single day for their randomization.
Yep.
Right? That gets sent to the lab regardless, whether it's that we don't even use a point of care cup for that. It's just in a sampler and we send it off.
Yep.
So the combination of the two has worked good for us.
Yeah.
Do you see that often?
Yeah, I mean it's all about navigating, and we're going to get into this, but what insurances will allow too, right? Because it's not feasible to do a confirmation with every urine drug
single
test.
POs, every
You can't do it.
single cup, right?
You can't do it. Insurances aren't allowing it. They're
Right.
putting restrictions on how many.
How many times you can do it?
Yeah. So this is the sandbox that we all have to play in now. Obviously, I'd like to be able to do a confirmation test because that's the most accurate way to know what's going on with the patient or the client. But with
Well,
insurances,
let's get into those weeds a little bit. This is pretty technical, and it's so different for every single insurance company, right? Insurance companies are now dictating to providers how many times they can test a patient with a disease.
Correct.
Well,
Right.
lab that test. Let's differentiate, right? And you're right, but I just, again, to be detailed, they are
sending it off to the lab.
Right.
Yeah, you can use as many point of care cups as you want. And you can actually use a lot more screens like desktop analyzer, immunoassay tests. But yeah, they're definitely putting restrictions on how many confirmations are allowed.
Are you guys
But
seeing
wait, let's-
how often that usually is? Is it once a week, twice a
No,
week?
he's got
let's
a
dive into it.
whole piece.
I know
got
you
the
guys
whole-
got all kinds of
He's
paperwork.
got
Let's
the
jump into
stuff
this
right
stuff.
here. So,
I'm stoked.
so it's interesting.
Oh, we're
'cause
gonna
you-
call some people out. I see some insurance company names on here.
It's interesting because you said that you can do as many POC cups as you want, but they won't pay for all of them. Insurance won't, right? If I'm reading this wonderful spreadsheet basically that you have here, there are many insurance companies that allow Aetna. I'm not trying to call anybody out, but Aetna allows 8 screens a year. Is that what I'm reading
8
correctly?
screens and 8 confirmations
Yeah.
a year. That's it.
Yeah.
So they only reimburse for 8 times a year on a client that's in a substance abuse treatment center. Or
Okay, I'm going to turn to you now, because you work in a treatment center. Can you adequately monitor an active disease patient with 8 screens and 8 confirmations a year?
absolutely
There's
not.
no way.
I would say 8
Right?
every
That's-
month or every other month,
That
maybe.
that means you get to test someone, screening test, once every 6 weeks.
This
How
is the
could-
problem, right?
How could you possibly
That's twice
monitor
a
that
quarter.
disease accurately if you can do
This
it
is the
once every
problem.
6 weeks?
That's twice in 90 days.
Right.
This is what insurances are doing. They're dictating, like you said, Doc, they're dictating to the providers. We don't care what you think is medically necessary.
Right.
This is what we deem
Right.
medically necessary.
They haven't seen the patient.
Yep.
They don't know anything about the patient's disease. I can tell you this. Your sickest patient can only get 16 total tests a year. Half of them screens and half of them confirmatory tests.
Yeah.
That's your sickest patient.
And all this stems from what happened back in 2013. Overutilization
Right.
of the
Comes-
confirmation test.
black eye.
Comes from the letter that I got where somebody was billed $88,000 for 6 months worth
And
of UAs.
providers doing profit sharing. Like,
Right.
I'm going to do a UA each day on this individual. I'm going to do a confirmation test on. So just the extreme, right? Instead of just doing things moderately and keeping it moderate, I think insurances wouldn't be cracking down like this.
Right.
But because of that corruption and because of the bad players,
They're sticking
this
it
is
to
what's
them.
happening.
There's 2 factors that I think factor in here, and one is the bad players. The other is insurance companies' job is to make money.
Yep.
Right. And unfortunately, we all have to pay for that. But the insurance company that allows less testing has greater profit.
Which brings me
Right.
to a question. So we've shined the light on the insurance dictating. We all work in this field. How often do we feel like it's necessary to screen a client,
Beautiful
to
question.
do a urine screening on a
Beautiful
client,
question,
whether it's
right?
confirmatory or whether it's just the screening?
So there's multiple answers to that. Anthony's probably got some. I've probably got some. You probably have some. But the point is, it's for sure different with every single patient. And yet they've got these dictates of here's all you can do for any patient you have, where we have some patients that 8 screens and 8 confirmatory tests a year is not going to be adequate. But we do have some patients that might be adequate for, right? So it's a very individual thing, but let's do that. What do you think based on how long substances stay in your system? How, and this is, I'm not nailing you down to this, but if you've got a meth addict who's been actively using, how often would you think, and I know you're not a provider, and I'm not, how often would you think you'd want to test that guy? Like he's just coming into residential,
Or he's just an
or
outpatient.
he's just coming into treatment of any sort. Maybe he's outpatient, so you might want to test him even more frequently. But how often? First of all, I'm not going to nail you down on that. That's a tough question. Let
I
me
know.
let me back
That's a
it off.
provider question.
I know. Let me back it off a
He's
little
smart.
bit. How often do you think you should test that guy if you never want to miss a time that he takes meth, uses meth?
So what's really awesome about our lab, like I said, with our lower cutoff levels, we've got the lowest cutoff levels out there. Your window of detection for illicit substances or whatever you're testing for are greater with our lab than any other lab.
Okay, that's cool.
And so, typically we can detect medications in the body depending on the meds, right? Like your benzos, THC stays a lot longer in the system, right? But typically 3 to 5 days we can catch substances with our tests.
Right.
Whereas other labs, it might be a little shorter of a window of detection because their cutoff levels are higher than ours.
Sure.
We're still going to be detecting it on that lower end.
So you're saying 3 to 5 days. Let's look at meth, which is typically in that range, 4 days or so, something like that, right? So let's look at meth. If you tested that patient twice a week, you wouldn't miss meth very often. Now, if you're completely randomizing it,
not if you're
might.
doing a confirmation. If you're doing a confirmatory test, if you're doing a screen,
that's what I'm talking about. Yeah, for sure.
If you're doing a screen, you might miss it.
Just depends on how much they're taking, right? If they're taking
the screens,
Really?
the screens cutoffs are not nearly as low as the confirmatory test cutoffs for a positive test.
Here's the other thing too. Not all POC cups are built the same. Like they're some of them get special certifications and special. They have to meet a higher level of definity, right? Like, in other words, there are some out there that are approved by these organizations that run
CLIA waived and
thank you.
Such.
Yeah. And so I get that, like, the point of care cups aren't ideal, but there are some that are better than others.
Correct. Yeah. At the end of the day, it's a screening tool. Like I said, you're not going to get the levels. So, if you have a point of care cup and it says positive for opiates,
okay,
what opiate is that?
Yeah.
Is it oxycodone? Is it Norco? Is it
poppy seeds?
Is it heroin? What is it?
Will you speak to the poppy seed thing real quick so you can stop
So the
asking
poppy
that question?
seeds. I don't know. I've gotten that question so many times
sure.
as a laboratory scientist. I don't know how many poppy seeds you'd have to eat to have a heroin positive.
But it's not a lemon poppy seed muffin.
No, I don't believe that would cause you to have a heroin positive.
Have you ever heard of the epidemic of the poppy seed or the transference of the poppy seed phenomenon?
What are you talking about?
Well, when one person claims poppy seeds and they get away with it, guess what the rest of the group's positive for?
Yeah, they all
it's all poppy seed. We all went to Costco and bought a carton of poppy seed muffins.
These guys don't eat anything other than poppy seeds, most of them, right? They're
I
on
call
a
it the
full
poppy seed phenomenon.
Diet. Right.
Because where there's one and they claim it, others shortly will follow.
Yep.
Yeah, for sure. Can we, I don't want to get off of this just yet, but we're almost out of time. But I called out, and I'm not really trying to call out anybody, but we talked about that. Now let's look at DMBA. DMBA allows for one screening UA a day and one confirmatory UA a day.
Yeah, look at the spectrum, right?
I'm gonna pat them on the back for being able to. Now, if anyone's doing one a day, come on.
You don't need
no
to.
one should be doing
don't need
that,
to.
right?
Yep.
That's excessive.
But I do pat DMBA on the back for allowing that.
Yeah,
that does not limit a provider's. That doesn't tie a provider's hands at all in monitoring the disease, right?
Yeah, if you look at Select Health on there, Select Health is interesting. They don't reimburse for a screen. They only reimburse for a confirmation test. So they don't put any. Basically, what they're saying is they don't put any.
Wow, they don't cover.
They don't put any
cups
stock.
at
They
all.
don't put any stock into a screening test. They'll only reimburse for a confirmation test.
They also, I'm reading the little fine print here. They also allow, if we're going to Select Health, they allow medical necessity, and that's for patients with between 0 and 30 consecutive days of abstinence, only one a week.
So if they're doing good, they're going to leave them alone.
If it's, 0 to 30, we don't even know if they're doing good yet. They're only doing one a week. You're going to miss some disease.
Yep.
You're absolutely going to miss some disease with those limits. For patients with 31 to 90, they allow 1 to 3 a month. And for patients with more than 90 days, they allow between 1 and 3 every 3 months.
Interesting.
Those numbers aren't terrible, except for the 0 to 30 days that they allow one a week. I don't think that's enough in residential treatment or in a new outpatient client.
Let me put some reference on this real quick, Anthony. If somebody uses meth, it's like 3 or 4 days. But the other end of that spectrum, or like benzos, it's going to be in there for a long time. THC is going to be in there for a long time. What are some other chemicals that are quick hitters, that are in and out, that you have a hard time catching unless you're doing frequently?
Heroin's pretty quick.
What's fentanyl? Do you know?
I think fentanyl's 3 to 5 days.
Alcohol is like 24 to 48 hours, isn't it?
Well, we test for ETG and ETS, which are the metabolites of alcohol. So we can detect alcohol use up to 3 to 5 days as well.
Really?
Yep.
3 to 5 days.
Yep. And so
I thought for some reason alcohol was like a 48-hour window.
No, that's what a
quickies.
breathalyzer will do for
So
you. But
ETOH, if you're testing for ETOH on a screening
Which
type
is the
test,
byproduct of alcohol.
no, which is alcohol.
Which is
It's straight up
alcohol.
alcohol.
Yeah.
Right.
So we're testing for the metabolites,
Right.
ETG and ET. That's how we can
Is it
detect that
possible to
alcohol.
test positive for ETG without drinking alcohol?
Oh, sure. There's got to be false positives, but they're not frequent, right? Do you know that?
We're getting into questions that would probably be better
These are.
for the scientist to answer. I've been out of the game for a little bit.
Yeah.
So, but
Oh my gosh, we're almost out of time.
Yeah, 44
I
seconds.
could keep going for 2 more hours.
Yeah, this has been fun, man.
I actually have enjoyed this a
well,
lot.
I hope you guys
What-
have learned some.
Well, hit me with if you got one final message for anybody, what would it be? What do you want to get across?
Well, one of the things that I was going to talk about that we're trying to do to align with the payers is we're trying to, so instead of having like a full comprehensive panel
You got like
where we
10
test
seconds.
everything, we're making custom panels, and that's what we're trying to do to help providers stay in these payer guidelines.
Well, thanks for your time. That was very informative and very entertaining, I thought. Anthony Povenza from Precision Diagnostics, thank you. And I'm Dr. Terry Sellers. You are
Jared Miller. And we'll see
Thank
you guys
you
next
for
week.
joining us today on We Do Recover with Jared Miller.
Help us spread our message of hope. Like, comment, and share.
If you have any topics or ideas for future shows, please share that on our Facebook page.
That Facebook page is We Do Recover with Jared Miller. If you or a loved one needs help, please reach out to us. Again, thank you for listening.
Brought to you by Steps Recovery Center, Rise Up Subs, and the St. George Hilton Garden Inn. The views and opinions expressed on this podcast do not reflect those of its sponsors. This has been a production from a podcast studio.